Hey everybody, it's Book Crazy Katie, and today's video is my 5-star prediction wrap-up, and please find me on social media at the following. Hey everyone, it's Book Crazy Katie, and today I am here with my wrap-up for my 5-star prediction books, and letting you guys know how it went. Surprisingly, I did really well, but I'll tell you my reasons why I think I did really well for it, and I quickly want to recap what I read real quick. So I read Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery, My Lady Jane by Cynthia Hand, Brody Ashton, and Jody Meadows, who are now being referred to as the Lady Janies, and I might just start calling them that if I read any other books or I talk about My Lady Jane in any other videos I make, because that's just simpler to say. The Book of Unknown Americans by Christina Enriquez. The Magnus Chase series, which one of them's on my Kindle, so I don't have the first book on physical copy. And John Irving's Avenue of Mysteries. So, out of all of these books, there is one book I didn't give a 5-star rating, and that is the first book, The Sword of Summer, in the Magnus Chase series. And the reason I didn't give it a 5-star rating is because I felt like it was taking Riordan more time to get the story unfolded, and I think that had to do with my unfamiliarity with, and just the general public's unfamiliarity with Norse mythology. So he was trying to get a good setup for that so you'd understand about Valhalla and the gods. There's a cat outside my window. So maybe I'll let him inside in a moment. But as I was saying, I think he was trying to get the framework established for Norse mythology and what's going on, letting you know about Valhalla and all that stuff, and getting everything started. And it is the start of a series too, so that would also take longer. However, that wasn't rated that low. I still highly enjoyed the book. It was a 4-star rating out of me. So, and I just want to quickly talk about everything and maybe go through my feelings. I don't want to do too much on summaries because I've talked about all of these books in other videos before. And so it's not my wrap-up, January to March 2018 wrap-up has individual thoughts on these books and summaries, as well as me talking about what they were supposed to be about in my prediction video. Also, my reading vlog that I did for my Buddy Read and 12-hour readathon talks about both Anne of Green Gables and Avenue of Mysteries as I was reading them. So I'm going to go through and tell you what I liked about these books and why I liked them. So, Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery, and that probably always sounds like one word instead of L-M. Sorry guys, I don't speak clearly, and I know this, I'm sorry. But Anne of Green Gables is just such an innocent book, and takes you back to childhood and just reminds me of being super chatty and super curious and super, interested in things. And Anne Shirley is such a lovable and breath of fresh air character, but at the same time she can be a little brat too, but in an adorable little way, so it's very fun to read this, very easy to read along to, and I look forward to one day getting into more of the series. And if I ever have kids, I really want to read this to them someday and hopefully get them into it. Alright, don't mess up your book. The next book is My Lady Jane, and oh my goodness, this was such a fun book. Out of all of the books, this and maybe the Magnus Chase series were the most fun to read, just because they were so much fun, But I was really into it. I liked the whole shape-shifting, and it's kind of interesting that they never explained how these powers work. They just had them and they went with it, and it didn't really need to be explained how the powers work. They were just pretty cool, and I liked the story. I liked the romance. I was just into it, and I loved the ending of it too. if you haven't read it, I highly recommend checking it out. But for me, it was super fun, and I really liked the reading and the writing in it. And I really couldn't tell, and I've heard other people say this too, I couldn't really tell you, like, who wrote what, and that it was written by multiple authors. It all flowed very nicely together, and I really enjoyed it. And it's told through a few different people's perspectives. You get Jane Grey's, Edward, and Gifford's perspective throughout the book, and my guess is that each author wrote one of the perspectives. But highly enjoyable, and I really do want to read the sequel, or not really sequel, companion novel that is based off of Jane Eyre, My Plain Jane. So maybe after I read Jane Eyre, I'll get my hands on My Plain Jane and read that and have fun with it. And then, out of the two serious books I have, I think, and it's weird to say this, but I don't know if you guys do this with, like, books that you rate, like, the same thing. I kind of have, like, a whole, like, little rating system in my head of, like, where they belong or if they're on equal things. And the Book of Unknown Americans is the first book in a while, like, that has made me cry, and I'm actually surprised that many books haven't been making me cry in the last year or so, because I cry over everything. But this book made me cry, and it was very near and dear, and I really liked how it handled such difficult topics within the U.S. society, such as immigration, and not just immigration, just like how difficult it is for somebody from a Latin American country or any other foreign country for that matter to come, at least non-European Western country, to come live in the U.S. and the way that they're viewed and the struggles that they face as they try to get by with their life in America. And so I was very intrigued by this book. It tore me up on the inside. The end just made me so sad. And it was a super sweet book, and I loved it. There were some funny... I was just trying to get down to... There's also funny moments in this book that are pretty interesting, and just deals with all kinds of life constructs, and I feel like it's a that it has a lot in it, and overall very strong. I look forward to maybe, and I'm such a flailing person too, I look forward to reading more books by Christina Enriquez. I should look to see if she has any more. And then there's the Magnus Chase series, which, it's Rick Riordan. So far, he hasn't let me down that much, at least, I have to say that this is probably the best series conclusion he's done that I've read so far. And so far, I've had Percy Jackson, Heroes of Olympus, and the Magnus Chase series. And this has been my favorite conclusion out of those three series so far. And I look forward to hopefully seeing Magnus Chase pop up in other books, or maybe even having another Magnus Chase series in the future if he decides to do that, because I totally think he could probably work it, But I really look forward to seeing more. If nothing else, I'd like to see him in more of the other books out of the other things, since he is Annabeth's cousin, and I'd like to see more of him and Annabeth. See their relationship more fully developed on and explored. And I really did enjoy the little bit of Percy that you got to see in the series too, so I just would like to see more of these characters interacting with each other, because I love Rick Riordan's magical world, that system that he has set up, and the way that they intermingle with each other, intermix, or however, I can't think of the right word, commingle. And then lastly, which is ironically the first book I read in this whole thing, because I totally did not go through this for date read in order of in the order that I read them. But lastly is John Irving's Avenue of Mysteries. I have read a few other John Irving books before. I think this makes like the 4th book I've read by him. And I really enjoyed it. I think I liked The World According to Garp the most out of all of his books. But this was still a 5-star read for me. I'm going to say that this one isn't as circular in writing as a lot of his other books are. It follows like 2 narrative paths, I would say, and there's this whole dichotomy throughout the whole book. They talk about the Virgin Mary, they talk about Our Lady Guadalupe, comparing, contrasting, and it kind of continues throughout the whole book. And then there's these 2 women that are mother and daughter that are, you know, always being compared to the 2 virgins and all this other stuff. So as far as like his narrative structure goes, this I feel like is a lot more simpler or uncomplicated compared to the other books I've read by him, but I still really enjoy it. It follows Juan Diego's past as he was a teenager, like 13 years old, and then it also follows his present, and in his past he's in Mexico, and then in his present he is on his way to the Philippines and is staying in the Philippines with a former student of his. And it talks about how his life changed from the certain, you know, it leads up to an event, and it talks about his life before the event and his life after the event and how it affected his life and how he basically thinks of himself as having 2 lives. So just get this whole, if you ever read this, just have this whole like idea of a dichotomy setting in your head and just kind of think of everything in 2s. John Irving makes, if you've ever read John Irving or read about him and his writing, a lot of people say that he's an autobiographical author, so that he tends to write about himself, but he always contradicts that and says that he doesn't. Most of the time there's like, protagonist has wrestling, they'll have kids, something will happen to his kids. Nothing has happened to John Irving's kids, but he feared that something terrible would happen to his kids someday, so he tends to write negative, you know, bad things happening to children and parents worrying about their children and stuff into his novels. And then he tends to make a lot of his characters as novelists, which of course Juan Diego grew up to be a novelist, and he was very into reading when he was younger and was a self-taught reader. And so Juan Diego was not a wrestler, though. That one threw off. For some reason, he seems to have a circus theme or something going on with the circus in quite a few of his novels, too. So there's certain things that always get, like, brought up again in his. But he really, like, brings up that whole, like, autobiographical writer and whether or not Juan Diego is one, or, like, he gets criticized for being one but claims that he isn't. So, you know, he's just kind of poking at that issue and trying to like take it further, and I just found it, you know, amusing because I know about the background, so it helps when you read more of it and you read about John Irving. But I was really into this novel. It's a literary fiction. John Irving usually takes me a few weeks to get through one of his novels, but I like it. It makes me think a lot, and you know, sometimes I don't understand some of the things he comes up with because his mind comes up. Hold on a second. His mind comes up with the strangest things. Well, I'm gonna go. If you guys liked this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you. My boyfriend just got home. Bye.